This screencast is going to walk you through how you subtract integers. So if you take a look at the little asterisks or starred phrases or sentences, it says do not subtract integers. You must follow these steps first. And the phrase is add the opposite. So let's go ahead and get the steps filled in on our note sheet. So step 1 is going to be to keep the sign of the first number. And then we are going to change the subtraction sign to addition. And then we are going to change the sign of the second number to the opposite sign. So if you remember back to dividing fractions and we talked about keep, change, flip, when we are subtracting integers, we're going to remember the phrase keep, change, change. So again, we're going to keep the sign of the first number, change the subtraction sign to addition, change the sign of the second number to the opposite sign. So if the integer is positive, we're going to change it to become a negative, and if the integer is negative, we're going to change it to a positive. And then we are going to use the integer rules for addition. So you're going to refer back to how we added integers. So let's go ahead and take a look at our first example. So if we take a look at our first example, we are going to go ahead and we are going to keep the sign of the first number, so negative 13. We're going to change the sign of subtraction to addition, and then this is in positive 4, so we're going to change that to its opposite, which would become a negative 4. Then we're going to follow the steps for adding integers. If you think back to our steps for adding integers, which is also included in your note sheet, remember that we find the absolute value of each number, and then since they are the same signs, we are going to add them together and keep the negative. So 13, absolute value of negative 13 is 13, plus the absolute value of negative 4 is 4. So 13 plus 4 is 17. And then again, we're working with two negatives, so our answer would be negative 17 as the final answer. So again, when we're subtracting, we do keep, change, change, and then we go through and do our steps for adding integers. Let's take a look at our second example. If you look at our second example, again, we're going to keep the sign of the first number, so positive 9. We're going to change our subtraction sign to addition, so positive 9 plus, and then we're going to change this negative 3 into a positive 3, and then we're going to go through our steps for adding integers. So we're going to find the absolute value of each number. So we have two positives here. The absolute value of 9 is 9, plus the absolute value of 3 is 3. 9 plus 3 is 12, and they are both positive, so our final answer would be positive 12. In example 3, now we see that we have a negative, so we're going to do negative 24, keep that the same, change a subtraction sign to addition, flip or change the negative to a positive 19, so we're going to end up with negative 24 plus positive 19. And now we're going to find the absolute values of each. So remember, when we're working with numbers with two different signs, we have negative 24 and positive 19, we have a little bit of a different set of steps to follow. So the absolute value of negative 24 is 24, the absolute value of positive 19 is 19, and then we're going to subtract those numbers. When we subtract those numbers, we get 5, but then we have to look back at the absolute value. The greatest absolute value is 24, and 24 is a negative. So our final answer, instead of just being 5, would become negative 5. Final example is looking at negative 13 minus negative 4. So again, we're going to keep negative 13 the same. we're going to change our subtraction sign into addition. Keep, change, change. So negative 4 would now become positive 4. So we have negative 13 plus positive 4. We're going to find the absolute values for each of those numbers. The absolute value of negative 13 is 13. The absolute value of 4 is 4. And we are going to subtract because we have two different signs. 13 minus 4 is 9. And then looking back, which number had the greater absolute value? That was 13. So 13 is a negative, therefore our final answer would be negative 9. So remember that when subtracting integers, you don't actually subtract integers. You follow the steps for subtracting integers where it actually turns into an addition problem, and then you use the rules for adding integers.